All right, so we've got a pretty interesting stack of articles and excerpts here all about the ENS DAO.
Yeah, looks like someone's really trying to get a handle on this whole decentralized internet naming system thing.
Exactly, and that's what we're here for, to help break it all down.
Yeah, we'll pull up the key takeaways, unpack how this DAO actually works, and hopefully spark some aha moments about where the internet might be heading.
Sounds good. So maybe we should start with the basics. What exactly is ENS, and why should people even care?
ENS stands for Ethereum Name Service, and it's kind of like a phone book, but for the blockchain.
The phone book.
Yeah, so instead of sending crypto to those long, complicated wallet addresses, you can use a human-readable name instead, like yourname.eth.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I've definitely had my fair share of typos trying to copy and paste those long addresses.
Exactly. With ENS, you can send crypto to johndoe.s instead of a jumble of random characters, much easier and way less room for error.
So it's basically all about simplifying payments.
Well, it's not just about payments. With ENS, you can actually host websites on the decentralized web, too.
Oh, wow, so that means they're censorship resistant.
You got it. No central authority can take them down.
So, like, anyone can create their own little corner of the internet that no one can touch?
Precisely. And it's just one of the three main use cases for ENS. It can also change how we log into websites and apps.
Okay, now you've got my attention. So you're saying I could potentially use my ENS name to access, like, everything online?
Potentially, yeah.
Hmm.
It's all about replacing those separate usernames and passwords we have for every single platform.
That's interesting, but is that even possible right now, or is this more of a future thing?
It's already starting to happen. There's something called Sign-in with Ethereum, or SIWE, that's making this a reality. There are even platforms out there like Clarity.so where you can experience this right now. You can log in using your Ethereum wallet and ENS name instead of an email and password.
Wow, so this is actually happening. It feels like we're talking about a major shift in how we manage our digital identities online.
Absolutely. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's circle back to the ENS DAO, the organization behind all of this.
Right, the DAO. I keep hearing that term everywhere these days, but I'll admit, I'm still a bit fuzzy on how they actually work. It's like a company, but also not.
Yeah, it's kind of a new way of organizing things. Think of a DAO as a company run by code and governed by a community.
Okay, and in the case of the ENS DAO, the community gets to vote on things using the ENS token, right?
Exactly. It's like owning a share in a company, but instead of dividends, you get a say in how things are run.
Interesting. So if I hold some ENS tokens, I have a voice in the future of ENS. It's almost like the digital democracy, which honestly feels pretty radical.
It is a pretty unique concept.
Yeah.
And they've actually done some pretty interesting things with it. One of the first things they did was airdrop 25% of the ENS tokens to early adopters who held not-S domains.
Oh, wow. So they just gave away a quarter of the tokens.
It was a way to reward the early community and bootstrap participation.
That makes sense. It definitely incentivizes people to get involved. So what about the rest of the tokens?
The remaining tokens were strategically allocated. 50% went directly to the DAO treasury, which is a pool of funds used to support development and other initiatives.
Ah, so it's like a community-owned war chest ready to be deployed for the benefit of ENS. That's pretty cool. So what kind of decisions can the DAO actually make with these funds?
There are two main ways the DAO can use its funds: through working groups and direct funding requests. Working groups are kind of like specialized teams focused on specific areas like ecosystem growth, public goods funding, even improving the governance process itself.
So it's like they've created this internal structure to handle different aspects of running ENS.
Exactly. And then there are the direct funding requests. Think of it like applying for a grant from a traditional foundation, except the decision-making process is entirely transparent and driven by the community.
I see. So anyone can submit a proposal and the community votes on whether or not to fund it.
Exactly. One example of this was the proposal to fund ENS Labs, the nonprofit behind the core development of ENS. They actually received daily funding in USDC, a stablecoin, pegged to the US dollar.
Yeah. Daily funding, that's a pretty unique approach. It definitely speaks to a level of trust and commitment to ongoing development. Seems like they're really in it for the long haul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's just one example of how the DAO operates.
Right.
They've also established something called the ENS Endowment, which is all about ensuring the long-term sustainability of the project. So the ENS Endowment is pretty interesting. They basically set aside a portion of the DAO's treasury and revenue to create an endowment, kind of like what traditional nonprofits do.
So even if, say, the crypto market crashes or interest in ENS drops, they'll still have this safety net?
Exactly. It's all about long-term thinking.
Yeah.
And they really want to make sure those funds are managed responsibly. So they actually went through a whole formal process to select a professional fund manager.
Wow, so they're treating this like a serious institution. But how does a decentralized organization existing purely online actually navigate the traditional systems of finance and law? I've always wondered about that.
Yeah, that's where the ENS Foundation comes in. It's a nonprofit organization based in the Cayman Islands, and it acts as the legal representative of the DAO.
So, like a bridge between the decentralized world and the traditional legal and financial systems we're used to.
Exactly. And they're all about transparency, too. The foundation is overseen by the DAO, and they actually reimburse the foundation for all of its real-world expenses, like office fees, administrative costs, all that stuff.
Interesting. So, they're not trying to hide anything. It
Yep.
definitely builds trust. So, let's go back to the DAO for a second. Where does the DAO's funding come from in the first place?
The main source of revenue is .eth name registrations. Every time someone registers a name like techguru.eth, the DAO receives a fee.
So the more popular ENS becomes, the more money the DAO has to work with. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Is it just a flat fee, though, or does it vary?
It actually varies based on the length of the name.
Yeah.
Shorter names, especially those 3 and 4 character names, are in high demand, just like premium domain names in the traditional internet world, so they command a higher price.
Ah, so even in this new decentralized world, the same basic economic principles still apply. Interesting. Do we know how much the DAO has generated in total from these registration fees?
So ENS has been generating revenue since May 2019, and as of today, they've brought in over 43.8 thousand ETH.
Wow, that's a lot of ETH. So where does all that ETH go?
Well, some of it funds the core development of ENS through ENS Labs. Remember, they receive daily funding in USDC. A significant portion goes into the DAO treasury, which is then used to fund various initiatives. And of course, some goes into that endowment to ensure long-term sustainability.
It's like a diversified portfolio for the future of ENS.
Very smart. Now, you mentioned earlier that the DAO works through these specialized working groups. Can we dive into what each of these groups actually does?
Sure, there are three main working groups: the Meta Governance Working Group, the ENS Ecosystem Working Group, and the Public Goods Working Group.
Okay, so what do they each focus on? So the Meta Governance Working Group, or MetaGov for short, they're basically responsible for the overall governance process. They manage the treasury, make sure everything's running smoothly, and constantly look for ways to improve the system.
Got it. So they're like the architects of the DAO. What about the ENS Ecosystem Working Group?
They focus specifically on supporting projects that are built on or heavily reliant on ENS. So they're kind of like the venture capitalists of the ENS world, nurturing the growth and development of the ecosystem.
Interesting. And lastly, the Public Goods Working Group.
They're the ones who fund public goods projects that benefit the entire Web3 space, not just DNS. They're thinking about the bigger picture and contributing to the advancement of the decentralized internet as a whole.
So each group has its own unique and important role in the overall success of ENS. It's a truly collaborative effort. Speaking of collaboration, let's talk about how everyday people actually participate in this DAO governance. We touched on delegation earlier, but how do proposals get created and how does the voting process actually work?
Well, it all starts with an idea. Anyone in the community can propose an idea, and the ENS DAO Governance Forum is where it all happens. It's a really active online space where people discuss all sorts of proposals and ideas related to ENS.
So it's not just a select group of insiders making all the decisions. Anyone with an internet connection can contribute. That's pretty cool. But how do those ideas actually turn into formal proposals that can be voted on?
Once an idea gains enough traction and support on the forum, it can be formalized into a proposal. And remember, we talked about those two types of proposals, social proposals and executable proposals.
Right. Social proposals are kind of like taking the temperature of the community, while executable proposals actually make changes on the blockchain. How does the voting process differ between the two?
Social proposals are voted on using a platform called Snapshot. It's an off-chain voting system, meaning it doesn't cost any gas fees to participate.
Oh, so that makes it more accessible to everyone.
Exactly. And then for the executable proposals, those are voted on using on-chain voting systems like Tally or Agora, which do require gas fees to participate.
I see. But didn't you say that anyone can delegate their voting power to someone else?
Yeah, that's right. So even if you can't or don't want to pay gas fees, you can still have your voice heard through delegation.
Delegation seems like such an important element of this whole system. It allows people with more expertise or time to really get involved while ensuring that everyone's voice is still represented.
I'm curious to learn more about these voting platforms, though. Snapshot, Tally, Agora, what do they like to actually use?
Each platform has its own unique features and interface, but they all have the same goal of enabling decentralized governance. Snapshot, for example, is known for being really simple and easy to use. It's a great tool for just getting a sense of where the community stands on an issue.
And what about Tally and Agora?
Tally is known for its in-depth delegate profiles and its focus on on-chain governance. You can actually see the voting history of different delegates, which can help you decide who to trust with your vote. Agora is another popular on-chain voting platform that's known for its emphasis on security and transparency. So many different options. It's fascinating how these platforms cater to the diverse needs of the community. And we can't forget about those working group elections. How does the community choose the leaders of those specialized teams?
Each working group has 3 stewards who are elected by the community to serve for a term of 12 months. The election process is overseen by the Meta Governance Working Group to ensure everything is fair and transparent. They usually announce a call for nominees on the governance forum, and then the community votes using Snapshot.
So the community has a direct say in who leads these crucial working groups. It's another example of how the ENS DAO prioritizes community involvement at every level.
Okay, so we've covered the working groups, proposals, voting elections. It seems like the DAO is a well-oiled machine, but who's actually doing the day-to-day work? Writing the code, keeping the website running. All of this can't just happen magically through governance, right?
Right. The core software development of ENS is actually handled by ENS Labs, a nonprofit organization based in Singapore. So they're the ones behind the scenes building and maintaining the technology that makes all of this possible. What sort of things fall under their responsibility?
They handle everything from the core ENS contracts to the ENS Manager app, the metadata service open source libraries, even the documentation. They're the engine that keeps ENS running.
Sounds like a massive undertaking. Do we know anything about the history of ENS Labs, how they came to be?
They actually have a pretty interesting backstory. ENS Labs was originally called True Names Limited, and they got their start thanks to a $1 million grant from the Ethereum Foundation. They've also received grants from Chainlink Protocol Labs and others.
Wow. So they've had a lot of support from major players in the crypto space.
Yeah, it shows how much people believe in their mission. And they've never taken any venture capital funding, which is pretty unique for a tech company. It really speaks to their commitment to their mission and their independence.
That's impressive. And it's not like they've solely relied on grants either. I remember reading something about an auction.
Oh yeah, back in 2019, they raised a significant amount of ETH through an auction of short UCIF names.
Yeah.
So they've really taken a multi-pronged approach to funding, which has helped them stay sustainable and keep innovating.
This whole ecosystem is so impressive. The decentralized governance of the DAO working hand in hand with a dedicated team at ENS Labs. It's really a fascinating case study in community-driven development.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of open source and the collaborative spirit of the crypto community. And this is really just the beginning. I think it'll be very interesting to see where they go from here.
Definitely. Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's helpful to recap some of the key takeaways for our listeners.
Good idea.
So we learned that ENS, the Ethereum Name Service, is essentially a phone book for the decentralized web. It lets you create human-readable names that are linked to your Ethereum wallet address, which simplifies transactions and paves the way for a future where ENS names could be used as universal logins across the internet.
We also spent quite a bit of time exploring the ENS DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization that governs the ENS protocol. We talked about how the DAO makes decisions through proposals and voting, how it funds development and initiatives through its treasury, and how it utilizes specialized working groups to manage different aspects of the ecosystem.
We also touched on the role of the ENS Foundation, which acts as the DAO's legal representative in the real world. And of course, we can't forget about the dedicated team at ENS Labs, the nonprofit organization that's responsible for building and maintaining the technology behind ENS.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to explore.
So before we completely wrap up this deep dive on the ENS DAO, I keep thinking about this whole digital identity thing that we touched on earlier.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
I mean, we're so used to these big tech companies having all this control over our online identities. How does ENS change that dynamic?
Well, it really comes down to this idea of individuals owning and managing their own data instead of relying on these big companies to do it for them.
Right. So instead of having all these separate accounts and profiles scattered across the internet, it's all tied to your ENS name.
Exactly. It's like having one digital passport for the entire internet.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But how does that actually work in practice? You mentioned sign in with Ethereum earlier. Is that the key?
Yeah, SIWE is all about using your Ethereum wallet and ENS name to log in to websites and applications. It's like a more secure, decentralized alternative to those traditional login systems that we're all used to.
So instead of having to remember a million different usernames and passwords, I could just use my ENS name to access everything.
That's the vision. And it's already starting to happen. There are platforms out there like login.xyz and clarity.so that are already using SIWE.
Wow, so this future is closer than I thought. Okay, but let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something a bit more practical. I know that ENS names are registered for a certain number of years, just like traditional domain names. What happens when a name expires?
Well, there's a 90-day grace period where the owner can renew their name. But if they don't, it goes into a temporary premium auction.
A temporary premium auction? Why temporary?
It's basically a way to make sure that highly desirable names don't just sit idle. The auction lasts for 21 days, and anyone can bid on the expired name.
So even if I missed out on registering my dream ENS name the first time around, I might have a second chance.
Exactly. But you better be prepared to shell out some serious cash. The auction actually starts at $100 million.
$100 million?
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it's designed to deter casual bidders. The price actually declines exponentially over those 21 days and eventually settles back down to the standard registration fee.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. So it's like a way to ensure that only serious buyers are participating. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the ENSDAO. It feels like we've barely scratched the surface of all the implications of this technology.
It's really just the beginning. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in this space in the coming years.
I'm excited to see where it all goes. A huge thank you to you, our expert guide, for sharing your knowledge with us today. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of ENS.
It's been a pleasure.
If you're eager to learn more, be sure to check out the ENSDAO Governance Forum, the ENS Manager app, and the various voting platforms that we mentioned, like Snapshot Tally and Agora.
There's a whole world of information out there.
And as always, the future of the internet is in our hands.
Let's make it a good one.